Good afternoon. My name is Eric Malterre. I'm the Chief Client Officer of Sedgwick International, supporting our clients across international markets outside of the Americas. I'm currently sitting in London. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and we have quite an important and broad topic to discuss. Our recent COVID-19 developments impacting global operations and what it means for the future. What I propose we do today is to share our perception on the effects that COVID-19 has had on the insurance industry and the management of claims in particular. Before we proceed, I'd like to say a few words of the recent COVID-19 developments. Clearly, while the global impact of COVID-19 has put the risk of pandemic on top of the list and has reminded us that we have never been so interconnected. As a matter of fact, the response that we have developed to tackle this major challenge is quite fragmented, varying per country, per region, and depending on, for large part, on the vaccination strategy that has been adopted. Adding the fact that new strains of the virus have emerged, and we all understand that this fragmented approach affects the recovery scenario. There is indeed a tremendous variance of recovery prospects. Regional disparities have emerged. We talked about it, based on case counts, mitigation efforts, and timeline to achieve widespread immunity, with developed markets recovering faster and sooner than emerging markets. This divergence that we observe per region is also very pronounced per industry sector. So industries like hospitality, leisure and travel, for instance, continue to struggle with low demand and higher debt balances. Conversely, consumer staples, technology, healthcare, home builders have fared well, and in some cases better than anticipated. So clearly, the recovery expectations remain fluid and will rely on many factors, including companies' ability to understand and embrace the inevitable post-pandemic changes in consumption patterns and to adhere to more conservative financial policies that are to come. Before we go into the details of the effects of the COVID-19 crisis on the insurance industry through a deeper dive into the supply and the demand side of the equation, I'd like to say a few words about the landscape, the risk landscape. Some of us will remember that Asia experienced the stress in 2003. This time, we are experiencing a coronavirus pandemic at a global scale. And moving forward, we can expect that to happen again, and maybe more frequently. This has become a global concern, and this requires a greater degree of preparedness. In addition, cat events are here to stay as well. They may be less frequent, but are for sure more severe. While other non-asset related risks have become a reality, such as cyber risks. So in a nutshell, the risk landscape that we're in was changing before COVID-19. But clearly, as a result of COVID-19, we see an acceleration of that shift. And more than ever, there is a need for a greater degree of preparedness, a greater agility and flexibility, a greater access to data. And clearly, there is a premium for financial strength. Looking now at the effects of COVID-19 on the insurance industry, I'd like to say a few words on the supply side. Let's focus on the insurance companies. Clearly, insurance companies have been dealing with many challenges. And just to focus on a few, which are, I believe, more relevant to the topic we are discussing today. Some of those challenges that those companies are facing are how to ensure sustainability in a context of low interest rates and a fast-changing risk landscapes that we have just outlined. how to balance cost efficiencies and customer satisfaction, how to balance automation and expertise in the underwriting process, in the interaction with customers, in the claims management process. Above all those challenges that we have just mentioned, it's quite clear that the role, the contribution, and the interaction of those insurance companies with the community have been challenged quite recently. There's clearly an increased demand for usage-based insurance and lifestyle bundle solutions. There's a greater expectations that CSR will be put into practice. There's clearly a greater expectation that insurance companies will deliver at the time of a claim. Let's take a look now at the effects of the COVID-19 crisis on global corporations. These effects, or the impact of COVID-19 on global corporate clients, have been multidimensional. It affects their workforce. We've all experienced this. Overnight, we had to move from the office to home. Many companies have adopted remote working, and it is expected that in the near future, hopefully, a balance between remote working and presence in the office will be the norm. The impact of COVID-19 has also affected the supply chains of those global operations, who basically faced a supply shock and then demand shock. The financial balance of many companies has been put into pressure, under pressure. The access to resources, the access to customers, and a shift in the consumption patterns are some of the examples of the challenges, of the effects that COVID-19 has had on those global operations. More than ever, there is an exponential reliance on technology and data on a global scale in a world that is more regulated. And from a risk standpoint, we have seen rate increases and a call for higher self-retention and a need for the sources of funding in many countries, in many lines of business. COVID-19 has also stressed the importance for crisis management readiness. Clearly, COVID-19 has had a multidimensional impact on many global companies. The COVID-19 pandemic is forcing almost all organizations to speed up their digital transformation, and this rapid transformation will inevitably increase systemic vulnerabilities to cyber attacks. Now, if we look more specifically at the supply chain, COVID-19 has illustrated that many global operations were not fully prepared or even aware of the vulnerabilities of their supply chain relationships to global shocks, such as pandemic. Clearly, many of those global operations have been deeply affected by COVID-19. Looking at the supply chain more specifically, we know that COVID-19 has put under pressure the supply chain of many global operations, exposing their vulnerabilities along the chain. And indeed, many companies have responded in multiple ways. The fact is, a decade-long focus on supply chain optimization to minimize cost, reduce inventories, and drive up the asset utilization has removed buffers and flexibility to absorb disruption. There will be some changes. We see clearly new supply chain technologies emerging, and clearly alternative models are now developed to challenge the linear supply chain mechanics. So yes, as we all know, COVID-19 has had a deep impact on global operations. Now, what does it mean to us from a claims management standpoint? where do we see some trends that are here to last? We clearly observe an exponential new reliance on technology along the claims management process. This is undeniable. The use of remote technologies such as robots, drones, and digital tools in replacement of field visits has grown substantially. And this is a feature that is here to stay. Indeed, COVID-19 has accelerated that change, which was starting to arrive anyway. And somehow this is a positive impact of that crisis. Beyond, there is an acceleration of the adoption of automation in the claims management process to simplify and improve the customer experience, to reduce cost, and more specifically in the low value and high frequency space. Here, the premise is to assume that digital technology is not an answer in itself. It's all about customers. It's all about solving their problems and improving their experience in the claims process. So we see a better usage of data, of behavioral science, combined with the application of skill sets and technical knowledge to manage those claims. COVID-19 has created an accelerated shift of the consumption patterns, and clearly there is an increased expectation for an easier access and a tailored service. The uncertainty around the settlement of the BA claims has damaged the reputation of the industry as a whole in the eyes of the public. So we are at a pivotal moment here for all of us. And this is also an opportunity to change that perception. As claims managers, we see ourselves in a unique position to restore that trust between the client and the insurance companies as a bridge. We also believe that the industry has a social role to play, and somehow the current situation we are in creates an opportunity to address it. It's an opportunity as a profession to demonstrate our ability to go beyond our own technicality that could make us misunderstood and somehow undervalued. Clearly, COVID-19, like other pandemics to come, or global NatCat events, for instance, should remind us that we need to work more collaboratively within the industry and beyond, exploring public-private partnerships, for instance, to build capacity and an ability to service risks of that magnitude. Looking at COVID-19, it's also a way to remind us that we need to be better prepared to deal with such crises ahead of the occurrence of those events. Now, from a claims management standpoint, it is quite clear that, in our view, that global operations more than ever need an access to resources and expertise as needed and wherever needed, and access and use to big data and analytics, reliable partners to work with who can work quick, who have the global reach, the local expertise, the reputation, the scalability, and the connectivity that they need. It is also quite clear to us that crisis management readiness is paramount to global operations. We all collectively need to be better prepared ahead of such events. Now, going back to what is probably at the core of everything we do, it's quite clear that the workforce has been deeply affected. We talked about it. And employers know this. There's things like social distancing, wearing masks, and working from home have become commonplace, maybe the new norm. And in the meantime, most organizations are still deciding whether their pandemic-related changes will become long-term. Well, the fact is that may make sense. Studies shows that many people who got affected by COVID-19 are experiencing lingering symptoms. So clearly, one of the key challenges that many corporations are facing globally is also to make sure that they have the adequate workforce absence and return to work strategies. They need hotlines. They need those strategies to be put in place. They need clinical consultation, nurse triage. That will make them different, that will help them operate better. This is basically, and in a nutshell, our perception of the effects of COVID-19 on these global operations globally and what it means to us as a claims manager. We are facing a once-in-a-lifetime challenge, and clearly this is here to stay. Important challenges are ahead of us, but being agile, well-connected, better prepared, and working collaboratively will be essential to succeed now and in the future. Thank you.